able to welcome you today. We have a very special guest, Trish Clark, who's the daughter of Sir Tom Clark, who's of course the founder of Crown Lynn. So we're very pleased to be able to have Trish here today to provide us a special kind of edited highlights tour of the exhibition.
We went to the factory a lot. I used to hang out there with the women doing the hand painting. And someone mentioned the other day that some of the fiesta spots are in the wrong place. That might well be because I was doing little dots in the wrong place. So there's those sorts of stories. But I just wanted to show you one of the most precious things that is part of the Clark family collection is this very early Bra Gardner. And Bra was the studio potter pioneer, and she was Dad's aunt. And essentially, Dad just spent hours in Bra's studio, sort of while she was working in over the kiln, questioning her on glazes and all of that, because the family business was based on bricks and tiles, which had been started in 1862. And Dad talked to Granddad in late 30s, who was 22, and he said, look, we make everything else with clay, why don't we make crockery? And Dad had a desire to really grow something in New Zealand. He wanted a sense of not being embarrassed by New Zealand things, and that New Zealanders could do great things here. And he had a great sense of sort of growth and quality. And so he brought Ernie over, and Ernie worked for a number of years. And this ducky blue glaze is a very rare one. I've got a pink one, which is, again, is very rare. And a green one, pale green, which is again very rare. And it's quite lovely just seeing John's whiteware, because John is obsessive. John's focused on whiteware, and you know, that's his thing. But it's lovely to see this ducky blue one. And that's like the bulk of what you see in the exhibition is, you know, the production. And I know because Crown Lynn is a sort of much loved part of most New Zealanders' history. And so it's nice that people can come in and actually sort of bring their following references to things too.
Part of what we're trying to do was very much tell the stories around these collections, the story of what it is to be a designer and the different kinds of acquisitive impulse and the motivations for, a collector, designer. So it was as much about that as giving a very specific kind of historical context for all these objects, but it was very much in our interest to bring these into a sort of contemporary art gallery context, rather than doing a museum show where we're saying every single object, we're kind of giving an encyclopedic sort of background for it.
I think we should kind of start thinking more about some of these objects and any questions you have about them, or any particular thing that Trish kind of has to offer, because it's been one of the great things been walking around here with her and just hearing these reminiscences about when this showed up at home, or when it, you know, watching it in the factory. Workers in the Crown Lynn factory making these objects, and many people have pointed out at certain times very specific objects which you can kind of trace from here to there. And I believe soon we get a great moment of the figurines bursting through the thing on their kind of triple stand, which would be really quite nice. But so we've hoped that this kind of moving image footage kind of works with these objects here to give you a bit of a sense of this kind of factory life. We didn't explain it to you over there, but this was a competition which Crown Lynn ran from 1959 up into the late 70s, which was an open entry contest where people could submit designs for production to Crown Lynn. And each year this was judged. It was quite a celebrity occasion. You would have been to a few of those, I imagine. With often the editor of the Woman's Weekly is the main judge, and some other celebrity judge who would then work through all these designs, and a winner was always selected. But here's a case which is really interesting where a design entry was actually turned into an object. Slightly, it feels kind of weird, it feels a bit unfair on the plate, because it's kind of obviously lost something in the transition from this beautiful, colourful Kawa design to what becomes known as the Nirvana pattern.
Thanks, Aaron. But this really, for me, is a real, it really is history here, and I think all of you should watch that because it's quite wonderful. It's a great piece of archival footage, and it is quite early. I mean, the factory by the 60s and 70s was considerably built today. Like, that's really pretty early.
Essentially, that was the brown and orange period. Everyone had the orange shag rugs, the brown and orange shag rugs. And that plate was, that was thought to be too clean, too vibrant, too designy. Whereas this was more the sort of, the orange and brown aesthetic and the sense of more naturalism in the image.
And I like Aaron, I love seeing all this wear. And I think Richard Quinn was sort of, again, mad obsessive. I mean, don't take mad, I'm not using that in a pejorative term, but he was a complete obsessive. And he scavenged when Crown Lynn was destroyed and the buildings were demolished. He scavenged all manner of fantastic things out of the demolition site and managed to save, all sorts of things that we wouldn't otherwise be seeing today. So he was that, there's a real place for complete obsessives. And it's fantastic to see it all here. They tried also with Mark Cleverley's Pine, because Pine came home, we said, oh man, that's terrible. And they tried very hard to change the glaze, but the mateness of that glaze, and that's why early shuffle bottoms things, they're not to be used with knife and fork. So I hope everyone enjoys them for what they are, but I see this as a real, almost, a cabinet curio. It's absolutely astounding. So, yes.
So who would have decided how many of each glaze would be done?
Oh, they did hundreds.
And then when the Fed moved on,
Yeah.
so a lot of the same forms and designs were used with lots of other glazes.
Yes.
Can I just ask you, Miss Mo, got you in this kind of gallery?
Yes.
Looking over the tiny little hand-painted bust.
Yeah, and that's how women came to be employed. So, it was a groundbreaker in terms of women. And so Doris Bird came over from England and she trained the women in the design department. They called that the specials department, the hand painting department. And a lot of them, Doris was the oldest, but they had some really young women, maybe 20, 22, maybe 19. And so that whole thing of understanding where glaze would go was a big part.
But that's always the thing, a cultural rapprochement, if you like, is always a fluid thing. And I think that's really all you can say about the Fontana weed, is that it felt appropriate to utilise these patterns in this way at that time. And now we look at this and think, wow, who'd be doing that today?
And I think if you haven't kind of picked up on it yet, one thing that I think kind of picks up really nicely with what Trish is talking about is that the blue sample pack there, which is a sample which copies a painting by Goldie Steele and Charles Goldie in the Auckland Art Gallery about the arrival of the Māori in New Zealand. So it's quite, I think that kind of way in which those cultures have been transmitted is pretty curious, and it's well in keeping with what else was happening in art and literature and everything else through that period.
I would like to bring sort of the formal part of the tour to a close at this point. I really would like to thank you so much, Trish, for sharing some of these stories. Some I was hearing again, and so many new ones. So it's incredibly generous of you to share your time and some of your family's history with us. It really brings the exhibition very alive in a different way.